Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. This is our second lesson in our 6-month political history, civic, and education course. This has been inspired. We've always wanted to do this, but this has been, I guess, made more urgent by the current movement in Kenya. And being a Kenyan through birth and upbringing, and my blood and my connection to our motherland, Kenya being, let's keep in mind, Kenya being a colonial entity. So being a person born in the area currently known, the region currently known as Kenya, which I am certain had a name given by our people. We are yet to find out what that was. We need to do the research on that. But I have been involved in the movement there, and in that involvement, I realized something that I knew but was reminded of it, that our people are very mentally colonized. Our people are seeing the world, their lives, in a white man's lens, a colonial lens, and therefore they don't have a full understanding of their situation. They don't have a full understanding of the reason why they are in the situation they are in. They are oppressed, but they don't even know that they are oppressed. And therefore, we at Kumbukeni are stepping in to serve our people by providing the information that helped myself decolonize mentally, because I was that African who thought that the West was helping. Look at the United Nations, they're doing such great things and all of that. But it took me seeing George Floyd, number one, seeing a white policeman put his knee on George Floyd, a WanaUbuntu man, and look at the camera as if he was not fazed, as if nothing could hold him accountable, knowing in his heart nothing could hold him accountable because he was a white male. And not only was he a white male, he was a white male who was an askari. So seeing that had me move from my ignorant mindset of thinking that, oh, the West is helping us, look at what kind things they're doing in Africa, to something is not right. And then I started connecting with our brothers and sisters here in these lands that they currently call the United States, and reading and being inspired by elders and finding out that this system that we thought was our normal way of being, that we thought if we work hard we can succeed, has been intentionally designed to have us subjugated and on the bottom, no matter how much we work, right? No matter how hard we tie those bootstraps they tell us to tie. The system is intentionally designed by those who tell us to tie those bootstraps to keep us down. And therefore, that is when I started the work that we're doing now in Kumbukeni. We are covering chapter 2 and 3 of, I have a virtual background today, so sorry about that, of Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. For those of you, again, I am going to share the link. Let's see whether I can talk and type at the same time. The registration link, if you would like to get the resources for the course, to interact with myself and other community members who are involved in these discussions. There is the registration link. Go ahead. Thank you to the few people who have registered. I am sorry I have not communicated this week, but I will get on that. Welcome you and connect you to the Google Classroom. And I thank you all for joining us. So Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, chapter 2 and chapter 3, but also a treat. And I will share it. Hold on real quick. Today, another treat is John Henrik Clarke. And he is an elder that I just love. John Henrik Clarke is one of those people who, when they speak, I don't feel a need to speak. I don't have that anxiety that we are not moving accordingly when I listen to John Henrik Clarke, because he moved accordingly. What do I mean by that? He realized what state we were in, because he had gone to, as a child, he was working at with a white man, a lawyer, right? He was working for him. And he went to him one day and asked to learn the history of his people. And this white man told him, I am sorry. Well, actually, I don't even think he said, I'm sorry. You come from a people who have no history. Say that straight up to WanaUbuntu. You come from a people who have no history. And John Henrik Clarke, being the awesome man he was, the awesome WanaUbuntu he was, said, I ain't taking your word for it, white man. I gonna go find out exactly what history we have, because I know we have. His spirit was telling him, this is not my beginning. This is not all that there is to who I am, enslavement and everything that was happening in the United States at that time. So he goes to Arthur Schomburg. You all know the well, you don't all know. Let me say, there is the Schomburg Museum in Harlem, New York, that was founded by Arthur Schomburg. It is a collection of Ubuntu history, our story through time. And so John Henrik Clarke goes to that man who had started the efforts in compiling records of our story throughout time, and says to him, I want to learn about our people. And Arthur Schomburg tells him, listen, in order to learn about your people, you need to learn about your oppressor. You need to learn about the people who oppressed you and why it was so important for them to remove you from that history. And so John Henrik Clarke does that. And it's interesting because yesterday I spent some time with a friend and my daughter, and he's a professor. He was explaining this very fact to her, that it's important to learn about their history, our oppressors' history, so that we can understand where we are and why we are. A lot of us assume that, oh, they are white people, we don't need to learn about them, it's not important. But in order to learn about yourself, in order for you to take yourself away from the prison that they have put us in, we have to learn about them and their ways. You have to know your enemy in order to defeat your enemy. And so John Henrik Clarke goes to learn about them. And then he comes back once he has that information to Schomburg and says, okay, now teach me, now that I have an understanding of these people, or somewhat of an understanding, because you never know everything. We are always learning. Please teach me about our people. And his journey starts there. So I want to start before I go into the video with John Henrik Clarke. And yes, I just shared it. So feel free to watch that. And for those of you who don't know, our lectures are on Fridays today, every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe it is 5 p.m. currently before the clock turns in East Africa. And on Mondays, every Monday, same time, we have an open space on Twitter, a space on Twitter where we hold discussions. And if you go on our Twitter, on the Twitter account profile, you will find recordings of the sessions we've had in the past, for those of you who want to start joining the engagement. So, like I said, let me start with Walter Rodney's. I put a star on this because we are talking about this today. We are talking about who we were before the invasion, because we were someone. Again, going back to John Henrik Clarke and this white man who tells him you have no history, you come from a people without any history. First of all, slap that white man in the face, push him to the corner, and then go show him. Actually, don't even go show him. Go bring out the history that you have of your people. And here we go. So Walter says, several historians of Africa have pointed out that after surveying, this is page 83 for those of you who are following, and I'm using the version that has Angela Davis's forward and a prelude by Abdul Rahman Mohammed Babu. That's the one I'm using, the edition. I believe it was printed in 2018. So page 83 of that, it is the conclusion of chapter 2. It says, several historians of Africa have pointed out that after surveying the developed areas of the continent in the 15th century and those within Europe at the same time, the difference between the two was in no way to Africa's discredit. Indeed, the first Europeans to reach West and East Africa by sea were the ones who indicated that in most respects African development was comparable to that which they knew. In other words, what they found in Africa reminded them of home, the place that they came from. These are the people who are telling us they civilized us, but when they get to Africa, they find civilization that reminds them of the civilization at home. To take but one example, when the Dutch visited the city of Benin, they described it thus, open quote, "The town seems to be very great. When you enter into it, you go into a great broad street, not paved, which seems to be 7 or 8 times broader than the Warmoes Street in Amsterdam." For those of you Africans who think that the West is better than us, oh, I want to go here and there, right? The King's Palace is a collection of buildings which occupy as much space as the town of Harlem and which is enclosed with walls. There are numerous apartments for the princes, ministers, and fine galleries, most of which are as big as those on the Exchange at Amsterdam. They are supported by wooden pillars encased with copper, where their victories are depicted, and which are carefully kept very clean. The town is composed of 30 main streets, very straight and 120 feet wide. Apart from an infinity of small intersecting streets, the houses are close to one another, arranged in good order. These people are in no way inferior to the Dutch as regards cleanliness. They wash and scrub their houses so well that they are polished and shining like a looking glass. End quote. In fact, at this time, we were cleaner than the Europeans because the Europeans, especially the English and the French, believed that bathing was a bad thing and therefore they did not bathe. You know, these are the little things, the little pleasures that I keep myself moving with. Like, y'all are trying to call us inferior, and you at one point you actually did not even bathe. Yeah. So that's our opening. Let's go to the video by John Henrik Clarke. And it is important for my brothers and sisters back at home on the continent for you to learn about our brothers and sisters abroad, their history. Their history is our history. Our history is their history, especially because people like John Henrik Clarke end up committing and dedicating their lives to connecting and themselves back to their roots and helping our brothers and sisters in these areas abroad understand that they truly did have a history outside of enslavement and outside of subjugation. So here, let's go. Let me just pull this up. What do you know? I closed that one, so let me just open it quickly. There we go. Okay. And I shared the link for those of you who just joined us. So John Henry, I gave the story of the lawyer that tells John Henrik, Henrik, Clarke, that he came from a people who had no history. And that first paragraph that we just read from Walter Rodney, and it was interesting listening to Dr. Clarke and hearing Walter Rodney's words, because I'm listening to Dr. Clarke and I've read the book. So it was interesting to see how the two of them point out things that are similar. Dr. Clarke in this video points out, first of all, he tells us, for those of you who are going to be making the active step of reaching back Sankofa to learn who we were, to pick up what is essential to bring it back so that we can move forward. Dr. Clarke says he learned the interrelationship of Ubuntu history to world history from Arthur Schomburg. He learned the political meaning of history from Willis Nathaniel Huggins of the Old Harlem History Club. And then he learned the philosophical meaning of history from William Leo Hansberry of Howard University. We do not name these names just to give names. We are naming these names so that you can go look up these names and find out what they were about and what they have written and what they have revealed about who we are. And Dr. Clarke points out, for those of you who want to be followers of Karl Marx, and this is why those who are close to me have heard me reject Karl Marx. Not that he was not, I don't reject him because what he was saying was not right. I reject him because we have our own way. I do not need to reach out to the Mzungu to figure out how we can structure our lifestyle, how we can move forward to liberate ourselves. We have our own ways. And John Henrik Clarke points that out when he says what Karl Marx was doing was just regurgitating stuff from African culture that the Europeans had stolen from our culture. Regarding the name Black, right? We call ourselves Black people. And this is now going back again to connecting to who we are. and starting to operate today in that principle of understanding who we are and not operating in a mindset that we have been told by colonial education who we are, which is a lie. So Dr. Clarke says regarding the name Black, by which we are referred globally, that when you address a people by their right name, the name must relate to land, history, and culture. So you notice you call Black people Black. They're everywhere. You do not associate them to a land. They're just Black people. And therefore, in order for us to associate ourselves to land, history, and culture, we have to be very intentional about the name that we agree to call ourselves. He says that all people go back to the geography of their original origin, and identify themselves no matter where they live on the face of the earth by that origin. We, WanaUbuntu, he says, have overused the word Black because Black tells you how you look, not who you are. He says the only people who seem to have lost the essential trait of geographical and historical reference is us, right? When you call Amzungu, they will tell you, I'm Italian. They will tell you their roots. I am Italian. I am Irish. Even when they call themselves white people, they will remind you what their roots are. And if they're not reminding you by their words, they're reminding you when you see them at the St. Patrick's Parade or at what's this other criminal celebration that they go to, the Italians. The man who claims to have discovered lands, that one. Those of you who know him, I am forgetting the name now, and thank you to my ancestors that I have forgotten the name. In the spirit, in this spirit is why we have moved to referring, so we, Mbongi ya Ubuntu, a part of Kumbukeni, all organizations that I'm involved in, have moved intentionally to calling ourselves, referring to our motherland, Nsi ya Ubuntu. The land, Nsi being the land, Nsi is a Bakongo word, and therefore we are Pan-Africanists, bringing that side of our people to the conversation, which represents the land. And then Ubuntu representing our culture and our history, our common spirituality, Ubuntu, and therefore the land of Ubuntu, Nsi Ubuntu. That is what we are referring to ourselves. We are trying our very best to move from, actually, we are intentionally making sure that we move from referring to ourselves as African and now referring to ourselves as or our motherland as Nsi ya Ubuntu, and we as WanaUbuntu, the children of Ubuntu. Because we have spent years, decades calling ourselves Africans, this is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? Even myself, I catch myself when I'm talking, I'll be saying Africa, 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 and I have to remind myself, Nsi ya Ubuntu, Nsi ya Ubuntu. Nsi, N-S-I ya Ubuntu. I will put it in the chat. So the land of Ubuntu instead of Africa. So there's some things I got from the video that I wanted to bring out. So you see how they've taught us that we are divided. Those of you who grew on the motherland, on Nsi ya Ubuntu, who grew up there, myself included, you remember, and this is another conversation that came up yesterday, when we thought about, especially the United States, our brothers and sisters here, Black people, right, in the United States, we thought about rap, we thought about the famous people, right? Mostly the music industry is what we were connecting to, and you can see the influences in Afrobeat today, so that you can see that. I was even remembering that I used to have my hairstyles once I had graduated from high school and was working. My hairstyle matched the hairstyles of a rap artist. I remember at one point I had a hairstyle matching TLC, like, so things like that. That's how much we were connected. And so we did not see the culture of our brothers and sisters here beyond music and beyond what was being shown to us on TV. But in this video where Henrik Clarke is presenting our story through time, he talks about, at one point, our brothers and sisters in the United States wanted to go fight for Ethiopia when the Italians were attacking Ethiopia. Because they realized, they understood their roots were on the motherland. They said, I might be here in the United States, but my home is there and my home is under attack and I want to go support them. And the only thing that stopped them was America denying them passports, while granting passports to Italians who were in the United States who wanted to go fight on the Italian side. So that is something that we as WanaUbuntu on the continent must understand when we are trying to now remember who we are and understand where we are. Our brothers and sisters in the United States are not Wazungus. It actually saddened me because the brother I was hanging out with yesterday pointed out that if there was conflict, if he moved back to the continent and there was conflict, tribal conflict that we have been suffering with for decades now because of what the colonial entities do, right? The CIA is busy daily, every hour on our continent, causing division, causing strife. That is what they thrive on. Their economy thrives on our downfall, on crisis in our periphery, is what builds their economy, and therefore they're busy at work doing that. But he, as a WanaUbuntu coming from the United States, right, a descendant of Africans who were taken from the continent and brought here, he says that if there was conflict, he would be considered a Mzungu. And for those of us, and it made me very sad to hear that, and it's true, because you all on the continent, I'm talking to you now, my brothers and sisters on the continent, you all have made the mistake of looking at our brothers and sisters who are elsewhere abroad as other, as not you, as not having a right to our motherland. They have every single right to our motherland. And in fact, because some of our ancestors sold them into enslavement, we must repair that harm by inviting them and making them feel even more at home in Africa than anything else. So again, change your mindset, right? Change your mindset. So regarding the name Africa, again, he talks about the Roman province of North Africa called Afrique. That is how the word Africa originates. There was a Roman province named by the Romans. So the term African is a European term given to describe our motherland. And we have just gone along with it as if we do not have brains and ways and words in our languages that we can call our motherland. There was a province once the Romans took over the north of our motherland called Afrique, and that's what they take the name Africa from that. Regarding Pan-Africanism, Dr. Clarke talks about Pan-Africanism in this video. He describes Pan-Africanism as the building of African world community. So as the building of Nsi ya Ubuntu world community. The building of an African people, WanaUbuntu, from different parts of the world. So again, it goes back to that mindset. Do not see them as strangers. Do not see them as Wazungu. They may have been taken away from our motherland and taken to a land where they are put through a culture that is of Uzungu, right? But they have held on. And I have witnessed that they have held on to their roots. They have held on to who they are through their food, through their music, through their clothing, through how they interacted. I mean, the more they continue to stay with this foreigner, the more detached they are from their culture, and we are stopping that from going forward. We are stopping it, and we are helping them reconnect to who they are. And part of that is going to be us accepting them back on our motherland as one of us. So he says that given our number globally in the billions, which is in the billions, for those of you who know that we are the global majority, when you think about Brazil, when you think about the Caribbean, wherever we are, Jamaica, when you think about the United States, when you think about everywhere the African is, you see it in sports, right? WanaUbuntu are playing for these Western entities. You will know that we are the global majority. And given that fact, if we did something, just one thing in unison, whether it was bad or good, it would be world altering. It would alter the world today. And so as I was reading this and as I was listening to this, I said, so imagine if that thing was our liberation, right? We are in a place where we think that, oh, we can't liberate ourselves. Or if we kick the white man out of Africa, how are we going to do it? If we kick the white organizations, if we kick the IMF out of Africa, how are we going to survive without the the donations, that the borrowing, right? No. John Henrik Clarke says to us, if we unite globally, if we unite mentally, globally, to know that we are under attack, we are at war, and we need to liberate ourselves from that attack, our subjugation, so that we can be a self-determining people. And if we worked together to that end, we would change the world. So I am hoping every single day I wake up with this hope that we will awaken to that fact and realize that that is our power, our unity. I say several times in Ubuntu, umoja wetu ndio ngao na nguvu yetu. Umoja wetu ndio ngao na nguvu yetu. I'm going to put it in the chat. Umoja wetu ndio ngao na nguvu yetu. So our unity is our shield and our strength. Our unity will protect us. Our unity will give us the strength to fight that which fights us. So y'all better wake up. Dr. Clarke mentions that Ubuntu, erroneously known as Africa, has always had things that other people wanted, couldn't do without, but did not want to pay for. So these, and I mean, when you're reading these things, when you're hearing these things said by our ancestors back then, tens of years ago, and I say a sentence like that, and I can actually see that United States ambassador in Kenya talking about how they're going to start the free trade agreement. I can see that French ambassador going here and there. Like, you can actually see contemporary time when you read these things. And he's saying they have always wanted what we have, but they don't want to pay for it, which is what is happening now. They take our resources and they don't pay fair market price for it. They determine the price and it's always undervalued. And then they process that, they manufacture it and sell the end product to us at high costs that most of us cannot afford on the continent. Even in the United States, even in Europe, a lot of us who are there cannot afford what the products that they end up producing from what they got from our motherland, our home. He says that through the invasion of Ubuntu, the Roman Empire that you all have heard of, that you all have had stories of excellence and how great they were, was built by taking resources out of Ubuntu. If not, but for those of you who are in the legal field, but for the Romans invading the northern part of Africa and taking the resources out of there and using African people to do their work, they would not have built the Roman Empire to what we know today. So you must know who you are. Dr. Clarke says that with each of these invasions, right, the Roman invasion, the Greek invasion after it, the Arab invasion, we became a bastardized people, right? This is why we now think that it is okay to look at North Africa as a white facing area, like that they call themselves in Egypt, they call themselves white. They don't understand that it's through generations and generations of intermarrying and interrelations with white people who had invaded Ubuntu that they look the way they look. And those are lands that are lands of WanaUbuntu. They point out Sheikh Anta Diop, who has done a lot of work to reveal that that area where they say has white history indeed had Ubuntu history, WanaUbuntu history. And the pharaohs, most of them, if not all of them, were WanaUbuntu, Black people, as they call us. Dr. Tano, we get into religion. He gets into religion. He says that the Roman taxation at that time of that oppression and the oppression of invasion, rather, and occupation caused people to turn to new gods. So these are people that our people have been occupied and they are oppressed and they're being overworked and they're being overtaxed. And therefore, it causes them to turn to a god, a new god, a god that is going to and abandon their old gods and turn to this new god that is being sold to them, that is going to come and rescue them because they want to be rescued from their oppression, right? And therefore, apparently they have a gathering, these Wazungu have a gathering in Nice headed by Constantine, where they decide to give Christianity a white face, right? This is where, and this is so disturbing. I have a friend, she's a good friend, and the other day I saw a picture of her on Instagram posting, holding Mary, the mother of Jesus, the supposed mother of Jesus, white Mary, holding white Mary, proud that she had white Mary. And now with my awareness, it just was just so wrong. It gives you indigestion, like, black person. There's a part here, Dr. Clarke says to us, if you believe that you are a child of God and that God is in your mind, then it is only normal to see that God as yourself, and you know as yourself in every way, your skin color, the way you talk, the way you eat, the way you move. And there has to be something wrong with your mind if you close your eyes, you see that God as white, as other than yourself. And I am telling you, it is a process. Even to this day, I am still working on cleaning that mind thought. When I close my eyes, sometimes I do see the white God, and I have to remind myself. Sometimes when I'm going through stuff, I'll say Lord, and I'll be like, what am I saying Lord for? I have to catch myself, because it's a process. It has been years. I am 44 today, and it has been 44. I started the journey of decolonizing and abandoning Christianity 3 years ago. So it has been 41 years of being told that God is white, Jesus is white, Mary is white, angels are white, reading all those books that we saw in school, in the libraries, of white heavenly beings, right? And now I have to come back to who I am and keep reminding myself and training my mind to go back to have a picture. I am going literally in my mind, going in that closet where I had put pictures of whiteness, taking them out, burning them, and finding them slowly by slowly, removing them, burning them, and putting in pictures of my reality, of who I am. When you close your mind, your God has to look like you. When you close your eyes, when you go into your mind. He says that when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoner of that other people. And we have been the spiritual prisoner of that other people. Is it Dr. Hin that goes to Kenya a lot? And I believe Nigeria he goes, but he goes to Kenya a lot. He's not even liked by his own people in the United States, but you Africans embrace him and you allow him to tell you how to move spiritually. A white man, a descendant of colonialists who killed, who enslaved your people, you allow him now to come and tell you what is right and wrong, who continues to subjugate and kill your people. Don't forget the Congo is still happening. Don't forget Sudan is still happening. Don't forget that several places on Ubuntu and outside Ubuntu where our people are, they're still being oppressed and killed by whiteness, by the false notion of white supremacy. So those are the people, those people who come from that culture that we are allowing to come back and tell us what is right and wrong. And we must stop doing that. And this is what I'm saying. No one is expecting perfection of you when you're in a state of decolonized mindset. But once you are given this knowledge, once you have learned that there is another way, once you have learned that what you've believed is not true and you are not what you've believed you are, then you must do differently. You must act differently. You must start acting accordingly. Then there's no room for grace because you know better. Oh goodness, I have to rush and finish. Dr. Clarke states that the Arabs approach the WanaUbuntu. Again, it's not just Christianity, Islam as well. The Arabs and Christianity, I'm going to summarize. He says that both religions came to oppress and subjugate, and they used their religions to justify the subjugation and oppression and enslavement of WanaUbuntu. Dr. Clarke points out, and so does Walter Rodney. And by the way, those of you who've seen Mama Kanyisile on Kumbukeni, on our collaboration shows with the Imagine Al-Kelbulan, have seen that we are pushing to publish her book, Ubulungisa, The Deconstruction of Gender in African Spirituality, the Untold Story of African Warrior Women. stories of African warrior women. And in the book, she gives a timeline for those of you who want. I encourage you, if you have the money, to get this book. Currently, we are accepting pre-purchases. I'm going to put the link where you can get that book, the pre-purchases. Uh, there, yes, you will find the tears there. But she gives a great timeline that shows our civilization way before Europe even existed. Dr. Clarke is talking about that. What they call the Dark Ages, what we have accepted to make our history, like in our head when we think about the Dark Ages, we are thinking about it as our history because we have been taught European history on our continent, on our motherland, in our schools on our motherland. The history that we learned was European history. And therefore, when we think of Dark Ages, we saw ourselves as part of it. Oh, we went through the Dark Ages. No. Dr. Clarke, Walter Rodney, Mama Kanyisile is saying to us, while they were experiencing the Dark Ages, we were thriving in our third golden age. At the same time, while they were experiencing Dark Ages, there were three great kingdoms emerging in Ubuntu: the kingdom of Mali, Ghana, and Songhai, who had an abundance of gold mines and controlled the trade routes across the Sahara and had a great respect for learning. These trade routes were interrupted by the Arabs and the Mzungus who invaded. And even they went ahead and burned the institutions that were there. We had St. Kuri at Timbuktu, which was a university in Timbuktu. That's how much we were people who valued learning. Again, we think that the white man brought civilization. No, we had started civilizing ourselves way before the invasion, right? And he also mentioned Salamanca in Spain, which was partially run by WanaUbuntu. So please watch this video. I'll quickly get into the book, chapters 2 and 3. Watch this video, and you will learn about a lot about yourself that you did not know and that you have been lied to through Western education. So in the book, we're going to go to communalism, right? Who we were before capitalism, we were before individualism. Individualism is our current way. We are a very individualistic people today. I am currently living with a friend, what you would currently call a stranger in the society we are in, because I have no blood ties with this friend. I have no familial relation with this friend. But once I lost my home, this is the friend that has hosted me and made me feel at home. I am not hosted by my family, and I have a lot of family in this area. I am hosted by a friend. Because we have become individualistic people who think, oh, my family, my house, my family, you're disrupting my family, you're disrupting my house, and therefore you cannot stay here. They don't see it as, you are my family, and therefore please come and stay here when you don't have a home. That's our communal way. That is who we were. You did not see yourself as you, your husband, and your children. You saw yourself as you, your husband, your children, your ancestors, your grandma, your grandparents, the friends in your community, everyone in Kikamba, we call it Otoi. The neighborhood was your community. And Uma Otoi ni back at home to this day, even after colonialism, we still, I mean, they're getting more and more detached. But I remember a time in my childhood where I could be sent to the next door neighbor to get salt. So that is who we were. But we were disrupted by feudalism, right? And feudalism comes into place when we start introducing exploitative hierarchy. When some of us start thinking they're better than others and therefore they deserve more, they deserve a certain status in society, and using that status they exploit those who are not of that status. That is when we lost our way. And through that, by the way, and through those divisions is how we weakened ourselves enough for the white people to come and exploit that and occupy us. So I'm going to read a couple of pages. So 46, I'm going to start with 46, go back to 43 and 40, because I think that order is ideal. So page 46, Walter Rodney says, Bear with me. Yes. In contrast, under communalism, every African was assured of sufficient land to meet his own needs by virtue of being a member of a family or community. For that reason, and because land was relatively abundant, there were few social pressures on incentives for technical changes to increase productivity. He gives this as a reason why we didn't feel the need to industrialize, right? Because we had everything we needed. And in hindsight, right now, when you think about industrialization, when you think about climate change, I wish we had held on to that, because and I wish we had held on to pushing away those who said they were going to come and civilize us, right? Because at least we would not have to be suffering the diseases we suffer today. At least we would not have to be suffering the pollution we're suffering today. At least we would not have to be suffering the conditions that we're suffering today, that have reduced our life expectancy, that have made our experience, our being, an unpleasant experience. um, I would give up my iPhone to be in a community, in an existence where we didn't have cancer. I would give up my iPhone to be in an existence where we didn't have HIV. I would give up my iPhone in a heartbeat to be in an existence where Congo was not occupied, where there was communalism, happiness, caring for each other on Ubuntu. I will give up my car, my iPhone, the shoes. I will give it all up to have that today in a heartbeat. If you said to me today in Duku, you can give up your car, but you'll go back to Ubuntu, where it hasn't been invaded by white people, where there's no pollution, where there are no diseases like you have today, where you have an understanding of your ecosystem, you understand how the herbs, the plants can heal you, where you're interacting in a positive way with the animals around you, your whole ecosystem, where you see everyone that looks like you as you, I'll do that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. So, page 43, and we have time. I'm telling you, time. We don't have enough time to do this work to liberate ourselves, but we will work with the time that we have. African communal societies had differences such as age grids. Now we're talking about the hierarchy, right? Because when I bring this up to people, I am pushing to go back to a place where we don't have exploitative hierarchy. This is for you who pushes back on that. African communal societies had differences such as age grades and differences between ordinary members and religious leaders such as rainmakers, right? There were people in African communities who were honored because of the role they played in community, and everyone understood that they had a special role in community, but it was not used to exploit the community. It was used in service of community. That is the big difference between that and capitalism and feudalism and all the other isms that have brought harm to our society. Um, page 40. Similarly, the labor that worked the land was generally recruited on a family basis. A single family or household would till its own plots, and it would also be available to share certain joint farming activities with other members of the extended family or clan. Annual hunts and river fishing were also organized by a whole extended family or village community. In a matrilineal society such as that of the Bemba in Zambia, the bridegroom spent a number of years working for the father of his bride, and many young men who had married daughters of the same household often formed work teams to help each other. In the home, a young man did not go to live with his wife's family, but the dokpwe, I am sure there's a way to say that, dokpwe, or work team, allowed a son to participate in carrying out a task of some magnitude for the father of his wife. In both of those examples, the right of the father in law to acquire labor and the obligations of the son in law to give labor were based on kinship. This can be contrasted with capitalism, where money buys labor, and with feudalism, where the serf provides labor in order to have access to a portion of land which belongs to the landlord. Having been produced on land that was family property and through family labor, the resultant crops and other goods, and I have to remove this Western tongue from my mouth. Oh my goodness. It bothers me. And other goods were distributed on the basis of kinship ties. If a man's crops were destroyed by some sudden calamity, relatives in his own village helped him. If the wild community was in distress, people moved to live with their kinsmen in another area where food was not scarce. In Akan country, Ghana, the clan system was highly organized so that a man from Brong could visit Fante many hundreds of miles away and receive food and hospitality from a complete stranger who happened to be of his own clan. So back then, we did not have this thing where you were looked at as a beggar, where if I put up a GoFundMe, you see me as begging. I wouldn't even have to put up a GoFundMe because my community, once I was not in a place, and back then, the thing that made you be in a place where you didn't have food was nature, not human beings. Today, it is human beings who have intentionally set up a system that keeps us subjugated, that keeps us unfed, that keeps us at war, that keeps us fighting each other, that keeps us unhealthy. And it is because of that that we lack, right? I was speaking again yesterday as we were in community with friends. Um, I went to a job fair yesterday morning. And as I speak of the job fair, I'll remind you all that we are offering these classes free of charge so that they are accessible to our brothers and sisters who cannot afford them. You have seen the protests in Kenya. I myself, being a Kenyan, can therefore not turn around and say, oh, I'm teaching these Kenyans so that you can decolonize your minds, but it's $30, it's $10, while they're on the streets because they don't have that money, because they're being overtaxed, because they're not employed, because they have no incomes. But I went yesterday to a job fair because I'm currently unemployed, and Kumbukeni is not making as much money as to sustain my life or any other thing I'm doing. And the jobs that I have applied for have all of them returned with an unfortunately, 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 right? None of them has even called me for an interview. And therefore, I went for a job fair yesterday. But the best job I saw, the best job in that job fair that was supposed to be for a seasoned person. This is for a clerk, a stage 4 clerk. So someone with experience, with years. I'm in my 40s, was giving a salary, an annual salary in the United States with the economy the way it is today of $42,000. $42,000. You all know today it is hard to find a studio that is less than $2,000 in northern New Jersey. But the minimum in New Jersey, the maximum at that job fair, right? If you don't have a PhD or some special acronym in front of your name, was 42,000. And therefore, as only a system like that that is designed to not pay you your worth, to not pay you. And by the way, this is a job where you will be working 8 hours. If that, you probably will be working more, doing all kinds of things, spending more time away from your family, working and serving that entity, and they're paying you $42,000 a year. Money that you can barely, when you take out your rent and other expenses, it barely meets it, right? And therefore, only a system like that today gets you in a place where you don't have food, you don't have a home. It's not like back then where it was nature. There was a drought, there was an attack, maybe there was winds, high winds, and you lost your home. But then we had communalism. You knew that you could go over 100 miles away and still be considered family and still be welcomed and given food and shelter. We need to return to that way. So our communal way, right? Those of you who ask me, oh, so if we give up capitalism, what are we going to do? We had our way, communal, right? We don't need to give it a name. We do not need to be out here talking about socialism or whatever other ism the white folk have told us to use. We had our way, communal. If you don't understand what it is, hold back, sit back, and I'll show you how it is practiced. Watch me for the next year or two once I settle down on that land, and then I'll show you how it is practiced. And then you do me a favor and monkey see, monkey do, and do accordingly. Do the same thing I have been doing and return to our communal way. On page 52, Walter Rodney talks about, and I'm looking at that time, racing against it, how we are interrupted by feudalism. In truly communal society, the leadership was based on religion and family ties. Religion, African spirituality, not religion. The senior members of the society shared the work with others and received more or less the same share of the total product. Certainly, no one starved while others stuffed themselves and threw away the excess. Those of you who follow me on Twitter, there's a video, I don't think I have pinned it anymore, but it is on our timeline. I'll see whether I can pin it today because we are talking about it. And that video will show you that line. And I say again, as you're reading, you see the images of things you've encountered. No one starved while others stuffed themselves and threw away the excess. Today, in our society today, in London, there is a restaurant that sells a hamburger for more than $10,000 because it has a gold leaf on it. And there are people, human beings, who have seen on the internet the suffering in Congo, who know from seeing on the internet that in Congo people are surviving on $2 a day, who will walk in that restaurant and buy that burger for more than $10,000 in one sitting, one meal. What I'm saying, what we are saying, what we are pushing for is a society where instead of spending that 10,000 on that burger, you will eat your regular rice, your regular pasta, and send for $20 and send the rest to Congo to liberate them. Send the rest to something that is going to liberate others. Send the rest to someone without a house to build a house. Send the rest to someone without food to eat food. That is what we are pushing for. And those of you who don't think that that is a sexy lifestyle, again, I am going to borrow from Baba Kaba Kamene because that is who I heard this from. You're going to have to just forgive me and cry a river, build a bridge, and get over it. So, I want to show you some other stuff that we were doing. So let me just randomly go to talking about things that we were doing because of time. Yeah, let me read this one here, right? How Europe became the dominant section of a worldwide trade system. Because of the superficiality of many of the approaches to underdevelopment, right? And because of resulting misconceptions, for those of you who think that look at what they're doing in the West, we need to be like the West. Again, I was once that person. We need to be like them. I used to think, oh, we need to do what they're doing. Look at how they're doing this and that and that. They've been able to do that because of resulting misconceptions. It is necessary to re-emphasize that development and underdevelopment are not only comparative terms, but that they also have a dialectical relationship one to the other. That is to say, the two help produce each other by interaction. The way we know it now under capitalism, development is the result of underdevelopment. They develop when they underdevelop. The transfer, Western Europe and Africa had a relationship which ensured the transfer of wealth from Africa to Europe. The transfer was possible only after trade became truly international, and that takes one back to the late 15th century when Africa and Europe were drawn into common relations for the first time, along with Asia and the Americas. The developed and underdeveloped parts of the present capitalist section of the world have been in continuous contact for 4.5 centuries. The contention here is that over that period, Africa helped to develop Western Europe in the same proportion as Western Europe helped to underdevelop Africa. So all that we were reading, all that Dr. Clarke talks about in this video, all that civilization that we had built, they literally tore it down and have continued to tear it down in order to build themselves. I think it was in Guinea where the French colonialists, and currently in Burkina Faso, right? When they left, they destroyed the infrastructure. They clogged the plumbing. Like, these people are such inhumane people that they can't just walk away from something. They have to walk away from something and be like, and you're not gonna enjoy it, right? That is how just a destructive people they are. And when we say this, we are not saying that they're not good white people. We're not saying that, because history has shown otherwise. But we are saying we have seen how the general people of your culture move. And because of that, we must be cautious when we interact with you. Because your general way of being is to destroy. Your general way of being is to occupy. Your general way of being is to invade. And we do not even have to involve ourselves in proving that. You were doing that way before you even encountered that to your own people in Europe. And this is revealed in this book. This is revealed in the video that I shared. And this is revealed even in Mama Kanyisile's book that we are encouraging you all to support in the publishing of. Let me go to another page. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask now. But we will have the discussion on Monday again. It's going to be on Twitter. It's not going to be on YouTube. It's a Twitter space that we open on Monday. We've been having some technical challenges because Twitter is Elon Musk's space and he's a special human being. And the other entities that work for him are special human beings, and therefore they make it hard for us to interact there in a way that liberates us. So, and I have come to you all, let's move to OBT, and you all have not moved accordingly because you all think we're living in Viva la Vida Loca, whatever the term is, and that we're not at war. I have said here on this space, we're going to be under digital attack. We're going to be digitally colonized, and yet you all wake up and act like everything is just perfect. Right? Leo ni siku nzuri. Let me go about my day like the robot that these people have made me. Yeah, I wanna read something that was positive, right? Not talk about the enslavement. The enslavement has not happened. The enslavement doesn't happen hundreds of years after we have been amazing. We have been excellent. We've built the wall in Zimbabwe. Let me find that. That is what I need to find. Let me find the wall in Zimbabwe. Here, let me find this. At Engaruka, just south of the present Kenya-Tanzania border, there are to be found the ruins of a small, impressive Iron Age society, which flourished sometime before the end of the first millennium AD, before 1000 AD. Engaruka was a concentrated agricultural settlement engaging in terracing, irrigation, and construction of walls by the technique known as dry stone building. So we were building our own homes using technical ways, using advanced ways. We were irrigating our own lands. We were terracing. We're saying these things. We are remembering these things so that we can go back, get them, and do them again today. In the land that we're going to settle in, we will terrace. We will irrigate. We will use these skills that we were using, techniques we were using then, to again get back to providing food for ourselves, so that the next time I sit and eat my meal, I know where it came from, and I know that I am in control of producing it. Where's another one? Let me find another one. East African civilizations, Bunyoro Kitara, right? Those of you, we learned some of this. Bunyoro Kitara comprised in whole or in part the regions which today are called Bunyoro, Ankole, Toro, Karagwe, and Buganda, all of which fall in Uganda, right? You people want to see yourself as separate. The Bugandans have fought with other nations within Uganda as if, and you go there, they have tribalism. You go to the offices there, you ask which tribe you belong to. Yeah, today they practice tribalism in their administration, their governance, all of which fall in Uganda. You're one people, except Karagwe, which is in Tanzania. Historical traditions have been orally preserved by these various peoples who at one time fell within the boundaries of Bunyoro Kitara, and the traditions concentrate on the ruling dynasty, which is known as the Bachwezi. The Bachwezi were supposedly an immigrant pastoralist group. They introduced long-horned hump cattle, which later became the major species in the interlacustrine zone, that is the lake area, the lake region, right? Lake Victoria, that area, East African. In this period, they are associated with, the Bachwezi are associated with iron making, manufacturing of bark cloth, the technique of sinking well shafts through rocks, the construction of extensive earthwork systems used apparently both for defense and for enclosing large herds of cattle. Let me find one more and then we are going to close. For those of you who don't believe that we were civilized before these people apparently came and civilized us. And I encourage you, if you can get this book, get it. For those of you who cannot get this book, genuinely cannot get this book, we have recordings of me reading these chapters, the whole book on Kumbukeni, so find them. and find them and listen, read the book, right? You can listen to the book. Yes, I'm not finding one. I just read that one. Oh yes, the Zimbabwe. Here is our last one. So the task being beyond the confines of the present study, this is page 77 for those of you who are following. It is proposed to examine Zimbabwe as yet another region where the productive base and the political superstructure can be ascertained to have developed appreciably in the last few centuries before Africa was drawn into contact with Europe, before they even smelled us. Within the southernmost section of the continent, the area in which striking achievements were registered by the 15th century was that between the rivers Zambezi and Limpopo, covering the territories that were later to be called Mozambique and Rhodesia. Iron-using and state-building peoples were active there from early in the first millennium AD, and eventually there emerged in the 15th century the empire which Europeans called Monomotapa. The term Monomotapa, let me get back my African tongue. The term Zimbabwe, is being used here to designate the Zambezi Limpopo cultures in the few centuries preceding the European arrival, because it was from the 11th to the 14th century that there flourished the societies whose most characteristic feature was the building of large stone palaces, known collectively as Zimbabwe, for those of you who don't know where the name comes from. Much has been written about the buildings which distinguish the Zimbabwe culture. They are a direct response to the environment of granite rocks being built upon granite hills and of flaked granite. The most famous site of surviving stone ruins is that of Great Zimbabwe, north of the river Sabi. One of the principal structures of Great Zimbabwe was some 300 feet long and 220 feet broad, with the walls being 30 feet high and 20 feet thick. The technique of laying bricks one on the other without time to act as a cement was the same style noted in the description of Engaruka in northern Tanzania. So this is to say, in the 1 hour that we have, there is not enough time to cover our story throughout time. I am intentionally not using the word history. And maybe I should change the title of the course. Our story throughout time, that we were a people of civilization. We were a people of innovation. We were a people of knowledge. We were a people of preservation of that knowledge. We were a people of industry. The gold that was in Mali, in those regions, the kingdoms that I told you were coming up and developing during the dark ages, while the Wazungus were experiencing dark ages. That gold was processed on Ubuntu and made earrings and all kinds of different tools that we used ourselves without the help of the Mzungu. Why is it important to teach this? Why is it important to remind you that this is who we are? So that we can start acting accordingly. So that we can start acting like who we are. Who we were, disruption, close that gap, combine who we are with who we were, and start acting accordingly. Use those techniques to start rebuilding, knowing that we can do it without the Mzungu. We don't need the Mzungu or Mchina or Mhindi or whatever it is to help us. We just need to look within our motherland, reach within our motherland, and find solutions within our motherland. Asanteni, siku njema, kwaherini. Again, join us on Monday on the space. Remind me if I have promised anything and I haven't shared. I have shared the form. Go ahead and register if you want to get the resources, if you want to interact with the community that is going to grow out of this, that we are going to be interacting and having these conversations with, exchanging ideas, challenging each other's observations in a very Ubuntu way, right? In a communal way. Asanteni, kwaherini, siku njema. Haya basi.